Okay. So yesterday we have done the installation part, and at the end of the installation, this is the screen that you would be getting in. And once you click on this reboot button, then you would be, it will get rebooted, and you will get certain options. So let us go and do that. So I hope you people might have got another email for the link which from where you can download this Red Hat Linux, sorry, Oracle Enterprise Linux software. So everybody got that email. No, not required Pallavi. Even if it is 32-bit, it is fine. So as I said yesterday, once we have this virtual machine ready, then we can go and change the settings also. So here I am just changing my RAM size. So I am making it as 5 GB. Even if it says unknown monitor, that is fine. But I'm not sure why it got stuck out. When to say, is it after installation it is getting stuck up? Okay. It might take some time. Actually, it might not have stuck up, but it would take some time. What is the RAM size that you have allocated to VMware? Okay, so 1.5 GB may take some time in order to boot up. So that might be the reason. I will say, may I know how much time you have waited for that? Oh, 40 minutes, but still it's not working. Then definitely some problem is there. Uh, Probably you can try, stopping the VMware and again starting it once again. Um, or if not, if still not working, then we need to check out why it is not working. So we can resolve that. Okay, so this will be the screen that you will be receiving, and here you need to click on next. So we are not going to do any changes. We are just proceeding with the next options. So here it will give you the chance to create one normal user, uh, but we don't require it as of now. So you can just click on continue here. And finally, now your system is ready. Okay. So what we are going to do, or how we are going to access this virtual machine. So every time when you reboot your Windows operating system, you need to start this virtual operating system. But after starting, we are not going to work directly on this virtual operating system. Instead, we are going to connect to this virtual operating system using a tool called PuTTY. So here you can see on the screen we have a tool called PuTTY, and this you can download from Google. The size is just 400 KB or 450 KB. So it's a very small utility or executable, but in real time this is how we are going to connect to the server. So this is the famous tool that we will be using in order to connect to the server. So how we are going to connect, I am just showing you. So the moment you say you double click on PuTTY, So you would be seeing something like this. Of course, first time you will be seeing something, everything blank over here. So in host name, you need to provide the IP address of the Linux operating system. So if you remember, for this operating system, for this Linux operating system, yesterday I have given one IP address. So I need to provide that IP address here. So the IP address which I have given yesterday is 192.168.1.18, and here below that you can see connection type, and the connection type generally we will follow SSH only, and the port number, that SSH. So SSH stands for secured shell. So we will talk about what is this secure shell and all at later point of time. So we will be using this connection, and for SSH the port number will be 22. And if you want, you can save this session. So for example, you can copy and paste here, and you can click on this save button, and the moment you do that, you can see your session here. So from next time onwards, if you double click on PuTTY, and you can directly double click on this one, or you can select and say open. Okay, so it's not connecting. Let me check what is the problem. So for that I am logging in as root user. Yes, the IP which we are using is for Linux only, Pallavi, and we are connecting from Windows to Linux. So here I mean to say, in our case the Linux operating system is there on the same server, but when you go to real time, this will be your desktop. For example, this Windows machine will be your desktop, and Linux servers will be there somewhere in the remote location. So how you are going to access is using this tool called PuTTY. So now let me check what is the IP address. So just like how you type ipconfig in Windows in order to identify the IP address of the server, in Linux it is not ipconfig. Instead you need to type ifconfig. So this is another, this is the command that you need to remember. In Windows we will be using ipconfig command, but whereas in Linux it should be ifconfig command. Everything seems to be fine because the IP address is same, broadcast. Suppose you want to change your IP address and all, so you can go to here, applications, and if you scroll down to system settings, so under system settings you will be seeing some option called network. So just click on this. So here you can see the status of your network is active, and you want to edit it, you can click on this edit option. So everything seems to be fine. Let me check once again. Okay, so here there is small change in the IP address. So there is, I have changed this IP address. So once we change the IP address, it is better to deactivate and activate your network once again. So now you can see it is in inactive state. So I am just making it as active. So I am checking now. So first I am checking by pinging here. So I say ping 192.168.223.3. No. And I think so now you can see there is a reply from the server. So that means your Windows machine and the Linux machine are in the same network. So if at all you have any network issues and all, this is how you are going to solve it. And once you are done with that, let me try to come PuTTY session once again. Okay, so now it is working. So first time when you try to connect from PuTTY, you will be getting this security alert. You need to just click on S button here, and it will ask you to log in as a particular user. So for your convenience, I am changing the font size and all. So now here, when it asks for login as a user, you need to here provide the user called root. So yesterday we were discussing about this, that the root is the super user of the database, super user of the Linux machine. So we need to use that. And yesterday in one of the screens it has asked you the root user password also. So you need to provide the same password here, then you will be logging into this particular machine. So the machine name is PowenDBA. So now I have logged in as a root user. So this is how you are going to install and you are going to connect to the Linux machines. So any queries are there before we start with the theory part? Yes, Pallavi, you can be able to connect to remote machines also, provided that remote machine and your local machine should be on the same network. Okay, so let's start with the theory part. So now I am sharing one PowerPoint. Hope you people can able to see that. So this slide is going to talk a brief history about Unix. Like Unix was actually invented in 1960s by a company called AT&T Bell Laboratories, and now we are just calling it as AT&T. And the person who involved in evolving Unix is Ken Thompson. And initially Unix is not UNIX. Initially it was pronounced as UNICS, which stands for Uniplexed Information and Computing Systems. But down the line, people started calling it as UNIX, or people make or habituated to write it as UNIX. And Unix was completely designed in C language. So along with Ken Thompson, even Dennis Ritchie, who is the founder of C language, is also involved in the development of Unix operating system. And later point of time, somewhere around 1973 or 75, Unix operating system was made as ANSI standard. And already what happens when we make one product as ANSI standard. So other companies can develop their own products. So just like that, when in 1973 or 75, I didn't remember the exact year. So during 1970s, when the Unix was made as ANSI standard, the companies, different companies who invents the operating system or who develops the operating system, they started developing their own flavor of Unix. That is where now you got Linux operating system, then AIX operating system, Solaris operating system, and HP UX, etc., etc. So we have so many flavors of Unix, I can say. And out of all these, Linux was quite famous, or very famously used. And Linux was also made as ANSI standard in 1983. So the moment once Linux was made as ANSI standard, then different companies started developing their own Linux. Like the very widely used one is Red Hat Linux, that is from a company called Red Hat. And you have SUSE Linux, that is another flavor. You have Fedora Linux, that is one more flavor. And you are having recently in 2007 Oracle Corporation, when it acquired Sun Microsystems, what it has done is it has taken the source code of Solaris, and it invented one more Linux operating system, which we generally call it as Oracle Enterprise Linux, or shortly we call it as OEL. So the software which we have downloaded, which we have installed yesterday, is nothing but Oracle Enterprise Linux, and the version is 4.7. And apart from this Linux operating system, you have Solaris, so which is also similar to these things. And Solaris earlier is with Sun Microsystems, but now it is with Oracle Corporation only. That means Oracle Corporation is providing two flavors of Linux, two flavors of Unix. One is Oracle Enterprise Linux and other one is Solaris. And just like that, IBM is having its own operating system, which it is called as AIX, and like that HP, Hewlett Packard, so that company has developed their own Unix operating system, which they call it as HPUX. And earlier we used to have another company called True64, and they have developed their own Unix flavor, which is also called as True64. But few years back, probably around 5 to 6 years back, this operating system was removed, or I mean to say that company was shut down. So that's the reason this operating system is no more there in the market now. So right now in the market, the flavors available are Red Hat Linux, then Oracle Linux, then Solaris, IBM AIX, and HPUX. So these are different flavors that we have available on Unix operating system. So for Unix operating system, this is what the basic structure of the operating system. So the outer layer, you can see it is applications, and under applications you have a layer which we call it as shell, and under shell we have another layer called kernel, and finally we have the minute components like hardware. So basically this is how the structure is designed. So any application, in the sense any tool or any interface that user is using. For example, we are using PowerPoint. So PowerPoint is nothing but an application that was developed in Microsoft Office. Or if you are using Windows Media Player, even that is also an application. Or if you are using browser, even Internet Explorer or Google Chrome, all these are applications. So how an application will go and talk to a hardware is through two components. One is called shell and the other one is called kernel. So let us go and understand what is meant by shell and what is meant by kernel and all. So starting with the definition of hardware, so you know already, any physical component that you can touch and feel, we call it as hardware. And kernel, so what kernel is going to do is, it is going to control the hardware devices. So basically kernel is like the interface between the hardware devices and the user or the shell, and it is going to control the access or control or supervises the hardware part. So for example, when you are playing a song, then only the audio will be activated. The audio device will be activated, and when you are watching a video, both the audio and video devices will be activated. So how operating system knows that we need to activate both devices, or we need to activate only one device? So how operating system knows that is because of this kernel. So kernel will take care of all those things, like it is going to activate a particular device or a particular hardware component of the server. And next you have shell. So we know already that computers will not understand human language, and the computers can only go through the machine language. So shell interpreter, what it is going to do is basically it is going to convert the language what is used by the user into machine understandable language. So we can say it is an interface that is acting between the applications and the kernel. And so that is what the definition you can see there. Shell is a command interpreter and acts as an interface between the user and kernel. And not only that, using this concept of shell, we can design a programming language, and people will generally call that as shell scripting. So the advantage of shell scripting is you can automate some tasks, like suppose you want to reboot your Linux machine every day at night 9 o'clock. So in that case, you can, instead of a person dedicatedly sitting and rebooting, you can put that into a shell script, so that automatically the server will get rebooted every day night 9 o'clock. Or you want to generate some report, like how is the server performance, etc. So in that case also you can schedule a report, or you can schedule a job using this shell script, so that those tasks will be taken care automatically. So shell will act in two ways. One, it is a command interpreter, and number two, it is a programming language. And we have already discussed this, that we have different flavors of Unix. So any queries there before we start with the next thing? And one more information I want to provide is each and every operating system like Linux or AIX, Solaris and all, again there will be having versions. For example, if you take Linux operating system, the current version that is going on is 6.2. So that is the latest version in the market. And for Solaris, the version is 5.11. And for AIX it is 7.0. So like this we have different versions have also in each and every flavor. But in our practice we are not using the latest version, rather we have stick to Oracle Enterprise Linux version 4.7. So as I said, the current version is 6.2, but we are sticking to 4.7. The reason is when you want to install 6.2 and when you want to install Oracle on top of 6.2 version, then you will be facing lot of issues. So apart from installation, you need to install some extra packages, or you need to configure some extra steps and all. So in real time, anyway we are not going to perform this Linux installation. So that is the reason for getting the compatibility. So because we want to practice both 10G and 11G. So if you want to practice 10G and 11G both, then Oracle Enterprise Linux 4.7 version is very suitable. So that is the reason, even though the latest version is there in the market, we are not following that latest version. But nothing will be changed according to the commands that we are going to learn. So the commands what we learn in the next 2 or 3 days will be same either in the older versions or the newer versions. So nothing to worry about that case. So any queries? So the second chapter talks about using the system, like the same thing. It talks about how we need to log in and how we need to log out. So as I have already shown you how we need to log in, it is using this PuTTY session, and how we need to log out. Yeah, that you can type this command logout, or you can type this command exit, or you can simply press this Control D. So the option was given over here, so you can see that. So you can use Control D, or you can say exit, or you can even say logout. So there are three options for you. So, and if you want to clear the screen, of course the command is clear. Just like how we use CLS command in DOS prompt, here we need to use clear command. And now let us go and see the very first command, that is date. So date command is going to give you the information about today's date as well as the timestamp also, and including the day and month and year also. So when you type the date command, you can see it is going to show you what is today's day, and then which month it is, and what is the date, and then the timestamp, and then you have a time zone, and then finally the year. So here you can see the time zone as IST, that means Indian Standard Time, but when you go to real time, instead of IST you might be seeing the time zone as PST if you are working in Pacific time zone. Sorry, I hope now you people can able to see the screen. So I ran date command, and now you can see the output here. So we have the day, then the month, then we have the date, and then timestamp, and including seconds, and then we have time zone, and then finally year. So as I said, because this server was created in our machines, the timestamp will be, the time zone will be Indian Standard Time. But when you go to real time, you will be seeing the time zone as PST, that is in Pacific time zone. Some part of US will work on this, or you might be seeing CST, so which is nothing but Central Time Zone. And if you are working for European countries, you would be looking at another time zone called the EST. So generally these are the three time zones that you will be watching in real time. So PST and CST fall under US region, and EST falls under Europe countries. So this is what we have with the time zone or the command date. And the next command we have is uname. So what basically uname command is going to tell you is, it is going to give you what operating system you are going to use or you are using. So if you see the output over here, it is showing as Linux. That means it is saying that your current operating system is Linux. But if I want to know what is the flavor of this operating system, that means whether is it a Red Hat Linux, or is it Oracle Linux, or is it SUSE Linux, or is it Fedora Linux, because in Linux itself we have so many flavors. So if you want to really go and check out that, then you need to run the below command, or the command which I am showing you. So you need to run this command cat/etc/star-release. This is going to show you the flavor of the Linux operating system. and it also even shows you the version of the operating system. So for example, if you look at the output over here, it is saying it is Enterprise Linux, then AS release 4, then October update 7. So which is there in the brackets. So when you see Enterprise Linux, do remember it is Oracle Enterprise Linux. So just a moment. Yeah, Enterprise Linux means, as I said, it is Oracle Enterprise Linux. AS here stands for Advanced Server, and release 4 means it is the version, and October update 7. So it means the service pack kind of thing. In Windows XP you will be having service pack 1, service pack 2 and all, right? So it's just like that. So it's Oracle Enterprise Linux 4.7. So if somebody asks you what is the version of this Linux, you can say it is Oracle Enterprise Linux 4, then you need to say this 7 also, you need to say 4.7. So this is how we are going to identify what flavor of Linux operating system it is. And the next one which is important for DBS is to identify whether this Linux operating system is a 32-bit or 64-bit. So any idea before going for this Linux operating system, how to find out whether your Windows is 32-bit or 64-bit? Can you guys let me know that? Okay, yes, we can check that from my computer properties. Okay, and we can check in control panel. I never tried that, but we can do that. Okay. Now, the first thing is, as you can see on the screen, just right click on my computer and go to properties. And here you can see system type. So here you can see system type, where it is clearly showing it is a 64-bit operating system. So this is one way we can find out. And the other way, as Sanjay is saying, we can get it from control panel, system admin. Let us check that, because I never checked that basically. System and security, okay. System and security, then which option? System, we mean, okay. Yeah, I'm going to say control panel, system and security, then system, which is again pointing to the same screen. So either in both the ways you can find out that. So similarly, if you want to find out whether your Linux operating system is 32-bit or 64-bit, how you are going to identify it? You are going to identify it with the same command uname, but by passing a extra option to it, that is uname -a. So here uname is a command and -a is the argument. So we generally call that as argument or the option for the command. So if you give uname -a, so it will give you much more information. It will tell you initially what is the operating system, and what is the host name, and this is your kernel version, and then on which date this flavor of Linux was released. Like it was released on July 25th, 2008, and then you have some processor information. So here you can see something like i386. So when you see i386, or when you see only i386, then it is a 32-bit machine. So if you see only i386, it is a 32-bit machine. Suppose if you see something like i386 underscore x86, sorry, if you see something like i386 space x86 underscore 64, then it means that it is a 64-bit operating system or 64-bit Linux flavor. So have you guys got this point? If you see in the output of uname-a, if you see only i386, it is a 32-bit machine. If you see x86 underscore 64 along with i386, then it means it is a 64-bit machine. And in our case, you can see after i386 we don't have anything. That means our Linux is a 32-bit operating system. So this is how we are going to identify, the content. So the next command we are going to see is how to find out how much RAM size was given for this server, or what is the total RAM size. So if you want to know the total RAM size, then you need to use this command free-m. So this command will give you not only the total RAM size, but it will also give you how much is used and how much is free also. For example, you can see here my total RAM size allocated is 5 GB or 5016 MB, and out of that right now 336 MB is being used, and around 4.6 GB is free. So this is what or this is how you are going to identify what is the RAM size that was allocated. And the next command that we are going to learn is to check out how many CPUs are there in the server. Usually earlier we used to have only one CPU, but with the invention of dual core, people now are having 2 CPUs. So dual core means 2 CPUs. But when you go to server or if you go for i3, I hope you people might have read about Intel's i3 processor, i5 processor, and i7 processors. So what that 3, 5, 7 represents over there is the number of processors or the number of CPUs. So if you go for i7, you will be having 7 CPUs, so the performance will be very much faster. And if you go for i3 processor, only 3 CPUs will be there. So compared to i5 or i7, the speed of processing will be slower. So just like that, when you go to servers, the number of CPUs will be 4, 8, 16 or 32, 64. So many CPUs will be there. So if you want to know about that information, then you need to use this command cat /proc and then CPU info, then grep processors, then wc-l. So this is the complete command in order to identify how many CPUs are there. So we need to say cat /proc/CPU info. Then we need to use pipe symbol, and then we need to say grep processor, then again a pipe symbol, then we are saying WC-L. So what is this WC-L? What is mean by this pipe symbol? What is grep or what is cat command? So we will be learning all this shortly. And now you can see it is showing you 2. That means this machine is a dual core processor machine. And if you have more than that, it will show you like 4 processors or 3 processors or 6 processors, something like that. So this is how you are going to identify the processor information. So any queries? Okay, so yeah, for people who don't have idea about cores, so earlier we used to have so we used to have one core in one CPU, but nowadays in one CPU we are getting multiple cores. So if you want to find out that information about how many cores are there, even then also you are going to use a similar command, cat underscore proc underscore CPU info. So you are not going to use these extra options. You are going to just type cat slash proc slash CPU info. Then it is going to give you that information, core IDs. Sorry, it is going to show you this CPU cores. So totally 2 CPUs are there, and in each CPU again 2 cores are there. So that means totally you are having 4. In total you are having 4 processors. So which will automatically speed up the server performance. So this is how we are going to find out how many cores are there. Okay. So then let us go and see the next command. So if you want to know as which user you connected, so in that case we are going to use the command as who am I. So this command is going to show you as which user you connected to the Linux operating system. So here we connected as root user, so that's the reason here it is showing you as root, and the same information you can get it with the help of this command also. So the above command is without spaces and the below command is with spaces. Then what is the difference? The difference is above command will only give you the name of the user, but below command will also give you at what time you logged in, and also it will tell you from which machine you logged in. So that 192.168.1.6 is the IP address of the machine from where you logged into the server. And the similar information you can get it by another command like who. So this will also give you a similar output, and you can get the same output using one more command called finger. So here also it will give you a similar output, and you have another command to find out which user it is, that is using ID. So when you type ID, you can see UID is shown as root, so that means you connected as root user. So for one output itself you have different commands in Linux. So the same information is getting repeated for everything. So this is the way how to identify with which user we got connected. And as a root user, as I said, root is the super user of the Linux operating system. So using this user, you can go and create multiple users of your wish. Suppose I want to create one user by the name PawanDBA. So I can go and use the command user add, then the name of the user. For example, I want to create the user by the name Pawan, then I can say simply user add Pawan. So then user will be created. Now the user got created, but what would be the password of that user? So, and how I am going to log in to that user? So we are taking a duplicate session of the server, and when it is asking for so when it is asking for the login name, I am going to give it as Pawan. But what would be the password of Pawan? Because here when we are creating the user, we have not specified any password. So when you have not specified any password, Linux operating system will generate some junk password, and we can able to know the password from a file called etc_passwords. So there is a file called etc/passwd. So from here you can identify how many users are there in the Linux operating system. Even you can able to know the login method, etc. So for example, you can see for the user Pawan, this is the information. But even though that is the information provided, even the password was not mentioned here. Even though the file says PSSWD, you will not be able to see the password. So Linux operating system will generate some junk password. So because of that reason, whenever you are creating a user, it is always better to change the password of the user. Suppose earlier I have created one user. Now I am changing the password for that user. So for example, I am giving like this. And now on the other window, if you give the latest password, it will allow you to connect. And now if you say who am I, you can see I connected as Pawan user. So here we have two commands to learn. Number one, we have user add command. So basically user add command is to add the user, and the PSSWD command is to change the password of the user. So in future also, if you forgot the password of Pawan, you can reset that using with the help of this command, and you can run this command only as a root user. So you cannot run it as a normal user. So like that we are going to add the user, and if you want to delete the user, then you are going to use this command user del Pawan. But here you can see when I try to delete, it's saying user Pawan is currently logged in. That means if a user is already connected to the server, you cannot delete that user. So first what we need to do is we need to exit, and now you need to try deleting a user. Now it will be successful. So user add is to add the user, user del is to delete the user. And yes, Raghu is asking a question. So he says like in real time only sysadmin or the Unix admin will have the root access. Yes, definitely. Root access will not be there for DBS in real time. We will be having only access to database user. Root user access will be there with sysadmins or Unix admins. So that means some of the commands what we are learning may not be, we may not run some of the commands what we are learning now in real time, because some commands are restricted only for root user. So that is how we have the things in place. And then let us go and see the next command, that is calendar. Even though this is very simple command, sorry, cal. So cal command, cal is nothing but calendar. So when you type cal, it is going to show you the calendar of current month. And if you want to see the calendar of previous months, or I mean to say somewhere around 5th month of 2008, so then you need to just simply type cal space file space 2008. Then it will display the calendar of May 2008. And if you want to see the calendar of future, then also you can go and do that. For example, you want to see the calendar of October month in 2020, you will be issuing the command like this, and it will show you the output like. So like this we have different, like this we can display the calendar also. And the possible least option is, so calendar 10001. So that is the first year in the first century. That is the least possible value, and the highest possible value is December 9999. So of course by the time we got that 9999, we will be taking so many rebirths. So that is the minimum and the maximum values that we have. And then we have some command. Okay, I deleted the user. So yes. So I am adding the user once again because I deleted earlier, and I am changing the password also. And now I am logging as Pawan user. Okay. So now as a root user, suppose I want to write down some message to this Pawan user. So what I can simply do is write Pawan, and then I need to type a message. For example, please save your work and log off. System is going for shutdown. So let's say I want to send this message to Pawan user. Then simply I need to say write Pawan, and then I need to type the message and then hit enter button. So the moment you hit enter button, in the other screen you can see you got the same message. So if you want to send out a message to the users of the Unix operating system, then this is how you are going to do that. So you are going to use write command for that. And if you want to come out of the command, so here you can see this one. So it's hanging like this. So when the cursor is hanging and you want to quit from there, then you can simply say Control C, then you will come out of that particular prompt. We cannot write through IP address, Pallavi, but we can write through something like this. Suppose there is a user called Kumar in another server, let's say 192.168.1.8. So I can send a message to the user who is there in another server with the help of the command what I am showing on the screen. Directly you cannot say write then IP address, but you can say write username at the rate of IP address. And one more thing is, if you want to send out a message, then compulsory that user should be logged in. Otherwise you will get this particular message that user has not logged in. So that is how we have write command. So this is how we have different commands in place. So we will continue with the rest of the commands tomorrow. And anybody is having any questions, please let me know. How to make output full screen? I have not got you, Raghu. Like, what you mean to say output full screen? Okay, just that's it. Maximize your putty session. How we maximize and minimize the windows. So you can do that one very simply. Yes, Pallavi. Toad is a totally different tool. So Putty is basically to connect to Linux server, and Toad is something like you are going to connect to database and you are going to do for some activities. So anyway, I am going to show you that in DBA classes. So any other queries from anyone? So I am sending out this PPT to you guys. If you want to come out, then you need to again, simply go and minimize here. So you can simply go and click here. So how we will be minimizing and maximizing our normal, Windows applications? It is the same way. We don't require to do anything extra. So sent I have sent you the Unix PPT to everyone. So just check out and check out at later point of time, and I will. Sorry, if you have not received it, then let me know. Yeah, VMware Tools installation, you can do that. It's very simple, and I have a video already in my blog. So just try it yourself. If not, I can show you in tomorrow's class. But it's very simple. Video contains the explanation also. You can go and do that very easily. Some live site to refer to Oracle practice. So what you mean to say that live site in the sense any live server for doing Oracle practice, you mean to say that? Okay, so if you want to learn Oracle from website, so you mean to say theory, right? My blog is more a kind of, for issues and all. So, but in my blog itself, if you go to my blog, I have already listed down what are all the books that you can refer to. So we have a tab here. I hope everybody can able to see the screen. So we have recommended books tab here. So just click on this. It will show you what are all the books that you can refer to. So these are all the books. The first one is official Oracle documentation. But if you start reading this, I think it will take ages to complete because it's not so easy to read all these books. So I am going to forward you. So I am just forwarding you a book. So this book is especially for beginners in Oracle DBA. So I am just forwarding that ebook. So that is by an author called Sam R. Alpati. So that's very basic, learning that you have. Of course, that book is of very big, like you will be having nearly 1300 pages or so, covering almost all the topics of DBA. So I have just forwarded even that book also. So you people might be receiving two emails. One is with Unix PPT and another one is this. And apart from that is what the third book. So the one which I have sent you is the third book what is mentioned in my blog. So apart from that, you can read the other books which I have specified here, and all these books are available for you know download. So from Google you can download using some cracking websites. So you can download these ebooks and you can read them, or if not, you can go and do that. You can do a hard copy purchase and you can read that. So both as per your wish, and these are very much enough. And I feel at least for you, for beginners, this book is quite enough. Yeah, so many books are there in if you just go to some websites, you will have lot of books. So you can go through that. No, Pallavi, I cannot say exactly that all the topics were given on OEM concept. I don't know which book you have referred to. But for example, if you go to administrator guide, completely commands will be there in administrator guide. Okay. Or if you go to utilities, that is also is going to talk about the commands. Or if you go for backup and recovery advanced user guide, that will also talk about that. So I don't think OEM will be given only in places where it is required, but not everywhere. So for time being, you can read the book which I have forwarded. So any other queries we have? Okay. And regarding the videos, so I will be uploading them and I will share the link once again, and you people can download and watch the videos.